The soft morning light filters through the curtains. Another day begins. For millions of us over 60, it starts with quiet rituals, a stretch, a yawn, the shuffle to the kitchen. Comfortable, familiar, safe. But what if hidden within these ordinary moments, within habits we've built over decades, lies a silent threat? What if the very way we start our day could be quietly, dangerously, tripling our risk of a life-altering event? Welcome back. We're where timeless wisdom from the East meets cutting-edge science from the West, all to help you not just live, but truly thrive after 60. Today's conversation, it might just save your life. Because every year, hundreds of thousands of seniors experience strokes, many without any dramatic warning, many without ever seeing it coming. It feels sudden, terrifying, random. But what if the first whispers of trouble were hiding in plain sight? And what if certain everyday morning routines, things you've done automatically for years, maybe decades, were acting like invisible saboteurs, quietly stacking the odds against your precious brain health? Well, joining me again today is a man who embodies the very essence of thriving longevity. He's been sounding the alarm on this specific danger for decades. Think about that. Decades of focused concern. He's over 100 years old. His mind remains remarkably sharp. He still practices medicine, and he carries a profound urgency about this message. He's here to share what absolutely every senior must understand before it's tragically too late. Dr. Shigeki Hinohara, welcome back. Thank you, John. Dr. Hinohara's voice, though touched by age, carries a resonant clarity. It's always an honor to speak with those committed to understanding their health. And yes, this topic. It is perhaps one of the most urgent messages I share with my patients crossing the threshold of 60. Strokes, he emphasizes, leaning slightly forward, they do not simply appear out of thin air, like a bolt from the blue. The signs, the courses they chart within the body, they are there. Often subtle, often overlooked, but undeniably present. With the right awareness, cultivated daily, these devastating events can be prevented. But the critical window, he pauses, letting the gravity settle. The clock starts ticking remarkably early, often first thing in the morning. That really gives me pause, doctor, I respond, feeling the weight of his words. Because when most of us think about strokes, we picture something sudden and dramatic, a collapse, a slurred sentence, a face frozen mid-expression. But what you're telling us is the real warning system, the early detection system, operates far more quietly. And it tends to activate precisely when we feel safest, most routine, brushing our teeth, tying our shoes, pouring that very first cup of coffee. Exactly so, Dr. Hinohara nods. That's precisely why this conversation matters so deeply. It's not just about recognizing the emergency when it strikes. It's about becoming fluent in the language of those tiny clues that come first. The little signals, the faint whispers your body sends out, sometimes days or even weeks before a major stroke ever happens. Ignore them at your peril. Heed them, and you hold immense power. In this episode, we're going to pull back the curtain on those first, easily missed signs. We'll also walk step by step through the most dangerous morning habits I see in seniors. Habits that silently, insidiously inflate stroke risk. Some will likely surprise you. And Dr. Hinohara has already indicated that the final two we discuss are arguably the most perilous and the most frequently overlooked. So, I address our listeners directly, the urgency rising. If you're over 60, or if you love and care for someone who is a parent, a spouse, a dear friend, I implore you, stay with us until the very end. This isn't merely about abstract prevention. It's about active protection. It's about safeguarding your independence, your memories, your very self. And every single adjustment we talk about today, no matter how small it seems, could make the profound difference between a normal, cherished morning and a life-altering, potentially devastating event. So then, Dr. Hinohara, I turn back to our centenarian guide. Let's begin at the beginning. You mentioned subtle signs. What's the very first indicator, the earliest red flag, you tell your patients over 60 to watch for? What should make them stop and pay immediate attention? Dr. Hinohara steeples his fingers thoughtfully. It's often not pain. It's not the classic dizziness or vertigo people might expect. It's something far more insidious because it's so easily dismissed as just getting older or having a clumsy moment. The first tangible sign for many seniors is a sudden, unexplained shift in coordination. Imagine this. He paints the picture. You reach for your toothbrush on the counter, and your hand overshoots or falls short. You go to sip your morning tea, and a little dribbles down your chin, something that hasn't happened since childhood. You try to button your shirt, a task done countless thousands of times, and your fingers feel thick, uncooperative, just off. Not paralyzed, not numb, just wrong. These moments lack drama. That's why they're so readily ignored, brushed aside. But neurologically, they are significant. Your brain is the maestro of every smooth, coordinated movement you make. When something feels clumsy, lagging, or uncoordinated, particularly if it's sudden or isolated to one side, that isn't just aging. That is a potential sign of a fleeting blood flow interruption in a critical area, a tiny stumble in the brain's electrical symphony. Have you witnessed this playing out with a patient, doctor? A real-life example? I ask. Indeed, John, he replies, his eyes holding the memory. I recall a gentleman, 74 years old, a retired accountant, very precise, very sharp. He came to my clinic not because he felt ill, but because he was puzzled. He said, "Doctor, I've been dropping my keys more often this past week, just fumbling them. And my wife noticed I was struggling with my shirt buttons yesterday morning. I thought perhaps it was arthritis acting up." Dr. Hinohara pauses, but I probed deeper. It emerged that just a few days prior, he'd sat down to write a simple grocery list. He got to milk, and his mind went completely blank. He simply could not recall how to spell it. No hedak, no slurred speech, no facial drop, just a blank. Something was fundamentally wrong. We acted swiftly, he continues. We ran scans. The images revealed he had experienced a small TI, a transient ischemic attack, often called a mini-stroke, earlier that week. That unexplained clumsiness, that momentary spelling lapse, those were the warning flares his brain sent up. The next 48 hours were absolutely critical. We adjusted his medication regimen, focused intensely on optimizing his hydration and diet, monitored his blood pressure closely. Because we caught those whispers, those subtle signs, and intervened during that high-risk window, he never suffered a full-blown stroke. The damage was contained, his life, his independence, preserved. And that, I interject, feeling the significance, is the crucial element, isn't it? It's about catching the disruption before it becomes catastrophic and irreversible. Acting on the whispers prevents the scream. Precisely, Dr. Hinohara affirms. Research underscores this vital point. A landmark study published in The Lancet Neurology meticulously followed patients after they experienced a TIA. Their findings were stark. The first 48 hours post-TIA represent the period of highest risk for a subsequent major stroke. But here's the empowering part. The study also showed that if patients received appropriate medical evaluation and intervention within that critical 48-hour window, their risk of suffering a devastating major stroke plummeted by more than 80%. 80%. That's the power of awareness and swift action. That's how quickly you can alter the trajectory of your brain health. That's both incredibly sobering and profoundly empowering. I reflect. It means that awareness itself, simply learning to notice when something feels off, even if it seems minor, isn't just knowledge. It can literally be a lifesaver, a brain saver. It's the ultimate form of self-defense. Yes, John, Dr. Hinohara agrees, but only if you know specifically what to look for and, crucially, when to be most vigilant. Let's talk about that one. Because you touched on it earlier, the most dangerous time for stroke isn't necessarily during the afternoon's hectic rush or a stressful meeting. You stated it's actually those first moments after waking. Why is dawn such a vulnerable hour for the senior brain? Because, Dr. Hinohara explains with scientific clarity, your brain and body undergo significant physiological shifts overnight, and waking up isn't an instantaneous on-switch. For most people over 60, that first hour after opening your eyes is when your vascular system is under its greatest silent strain. Think of it as a perfect and perfectly dangerous storm brewing. First, he counts off overnight dehydration. You haven't consumed fluids for 6 to 8 hours. Blood plasma volume drops, causing your blood to thicken slightly, becoming more viscous, like syrup compared to water. Second, the circadian rhythm dictates a sharp, natural spike in cortisol, your primary stress hormone, right around dawn. This is designed to give you energy to start the day. However, for many seniors, this cortisol surge triggers a corresponding, often significant, rise in blood pressure, the morning surge. Third, add the natural stiffening of arteries that occurs with age, arteriosclerosis. Now picture this scenario: thickened, slower-moving blood being forced through tighter, less flexible vessels under significantly higher pressure. Then, he continues, his tone becoming more urgent. We layer on top of this physiological vulnerability the way most people habitually start their day. Fast, distracted, often skipping crucial protective steps. We rush headlong into habits that inadvertently pour fuel on this smoldering fire. You've essentially created an internal environment primed for disaster. An environment where stroke risk doesn't just rise, it silently soars. Let's get into those habits, then. I say, shifting the focus, because I suspect, Dr. Hinohara, that some of these will sound deeply familiar, perhaps uncomfortably so, to many listening. And that's the point, isn't it? These aren't obscure dangers. They're woven into the fabric of our daily routines. Indeed, he acknowledges, these habits are common, culturally ingrained, often driven by convenience or decades of routine. But after 60, convenience can carry a hidden, steep cost. And the first one, tragically, is arguably the most overlooked of all: skipping water. Walk us through it, I prompt. Picture the typical morning sequence Dr. Hinohara describes. Eyes open, perhaps a trip to the bathroom, maybe brushing teeth. Then, the immediate gravitation towards the coffee maker. The phone is checked. The news flickers on. That first, often strong, cup of coffee is poured and sipped. But water? It rarely features in those crucial first minutes. That is the foundational mistake. Why? I ask, knowing the answer, but wanting it articulated for our listeners. Because after 8 hours of sleep, he explains patiently, your blood is akin to a parched sponge. Overnight, insensible water loss, through breathing, minimal sweating, has concentrated your blood. This increases its viscosity, its thickness. Thick blood flows sluggishly. It's more prone to forming microscopic clots. It forces your heart to work harder to pump it. It places significant strain on the delicate network of vessels feeding your brain. It creates a state of hypercoagulability, an increased tendency to clot, right when your blood pressure is likely peaking. He cites the evidence. A compelling study published in the European Journal of Neurology examined factors in first-time ischemic strokes. Their analysis found that low hydration status upon waking was a significant contributing factor in nearly half, 48%, of the cases they studied. Nearly half. Not primarily genetics, not solely diet, but simply the state of morning dehydration significantly elevating risk. Rehydrating isn't just about quenching thirst. It's about fundamentally altering the fluid dynamics of your blood, making it safer for your brain. So, what's your unequivocal advice, doctor? What should someone do the very moment they become conscious? I press. Water, he states simply, firmly. Room temperature or slightly warm is ideal, as ice cold can sometimes cause a slight constriction reflex. Not a sip, a full glass. Before the coffee, before any medications, before the news or the phone. You're not just hydrating your mouth. You are actively, purposefully rehydrating your brain, your blood, your entire circulatory system. You are diluting the overnight concentration improving flow, and sending a vital signal of care to your most vital organ right when it needs it most. That hits harder than I expected, I admit. I reflect on countless mornings in my own life, rushing straight to caffeine and the day's demands, bypassing water entirely. And I know, with absolute certainty, I'm far from alone in that pattern. You are not alone, John, Dr. Hinohara confirms gently. It is the ingrained habit of millions. But your brain doesn't crave stimulation first thing. Its primal, fundamental need is for optimal circulation. And that vital circulation doesn't start with the jolt of caffeine. It starts with the simple, profound act of hydration. It sets the physiological stage for safety. What I deeply appreciate about your perspective, Doctor, I note, is its grounding in empowerment, not fear. It's about understanding function and learning how to support the body in doing what it inherently wants to do. Heal, flow, thrive. We just need to stop inadvertently throwing obstacles in its path. Precisely, he concurs. The body possesses immense wisdom and resilience. Our role is to align our habits with that wisdom. All right, I'll move us forward. Let's address the second morning habit you've identified as a silent stroke risk amplifier for the over 60 crowd. The second perilous habit, Dr. Hinohara states, is something almost no one discusses in this context, yet I observe it constantly in my older patients. Prolonged sitting in bed after waking. Remaining seated, perhaps scrolling through a phone, reading, or simply sitting still in a state of inertia for 20, 30 minutes or more without initiating movement. Explain the danger, I request. We think of this as gentle easing into the day, perhaps even restful. It's a vascular bottleneck disguised as comfort, he clarifies. After 60, blood vessels naturally lose some elasticity. Veins, particularly in the legs, rely more on muscle contraction, the muscle pump, to push blood back up towards the heart against gravity. When you transition from hours of lying horizontally to sitting upright, but completely motionless, blood can pool significantly in the veins of your lower legs and pelvis. This pooling, he continues, slows the return of blood to the heart. Reduced blood return means less blood is pumped out with the next heartbeat. This translates directly to reduced blood flow, perfusion to the brain. For someone with existing plaque in their arteries, atherosclerosis, a predisposition to clotting, or even undetected atrial fibrillation, an irregular heart rhythm, this period of stagnant flow becomes a dangerous window. It creates an environment where small clots can form in the pooled blood. Furthermore, if blood pressure surges during this time, perhaps due to stress or even the strain of eventually standing up, or if a small clot is formed, those first movements can dislodge it, sending it upwards towards the brain or lungs. He shares a sobering observation. I have encountered patients who suffered strokes literally in the bathroom shortly after waking, precisely because they moved abruptly from prolonged sitting or lying directly to straining like during a bowel movement, without allowing their circulation to transition gradually. The sudden pressure change and physical strain on a vulnerable system prove catastrophic. So, what's the safer, smarter alternative to just sitting there? I ask. Wake up slowly, yes, but incorporate gentle movement early, Dr. Hinohara advises. While still lying down, before you even sit up, rotate your ankles, flex and point your toes, gently bend and stretch your knees. This gets blood moving in the legs. Then, when you sit up on the edge of the bed, do slow shoulder rolls, gentle neck rotations, never cranking or forcing, perhaps gentle torso twists. Finally, stand up gently, holding on to something stable if needed. The key is priming the muscle pump and encouraging blood to return upwards before demanding full upright activity. Even just 2 or 3 minutes of this deliberate, gentle movement can dramatically prime your vascular system for a safer morning. It's not exercise, it's circulation preparation. That's such a simple, almost effortless shift, I remark. And again, it's framed not as a burdensome chore, but as a smarter way to honor the body's needs. That truly is the essence of sustainable longevity, small moments of awareness creating outsized positive impacts. Indeed, Dr. Hinohara smiles softly. Longevity is woven from daily threads of conscious care. Let's delve into habit number 3. I continue, because I suspect this next one affects a vast number of retirees and seniors, myself included at times. Yes, Dr. Hinohara nods. The third habit that significantly elevates stroke risk after 60 is skipping breakfast entirely. And I want to be clear, I don't mean skipping a large, heavy meal. I mean consuming nothing at all except perhaps coffee or tea in that critical first hour or two after waking. Too many older adults wake up, drink their caffeinated beverage, take their morning medications, and consume 0 calories. They cite lack of hunger, or increasingly, they are attempting intermittent fasting patterns popularized for younger demographics. But isn't fasting supposed to be healthy, doctor? I thought it promoted cellular repair and longevity. I query, voicing the common belief. Fasting can offer benefits, he acknowledges, but primarily in younger bodies with stable blood sugar regulation and robust hormonal rhythms. After 60, the body often becomes significantly more vulnerable to hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. When blood sugar drops, the brain is the first organ to suffer. Why? Because the brain runs almost exclusively on glucose. It doesn't store much glycogen, stored glucose, itself, unlike muscles or the liver. It relies on a constant supply from the bloodstream. Combine this vulnerability, he warns, with the overnight fast and potential dehydration we've already discussed, and skipping breakfast becomes a dangerous gamble. You're potentially creating a scenario where your brain is energy deprived and circulation compromised right at its most vulnerable time. This can manifest as dizziness, mental fog, weakness, or confusion, symptoms that themselves increase fall risk. But more insidiously, for someone on blood pressure medication, which can sometimes lower blood sugar, or diabetes medication, especially insulin or sulfonylureas, which actively lower blood sugar, skipping breakfast can trigger profound, dangerous hypoglycemia. Low blood sugar is a significant physiological stressor. It triggers the release of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, which cause blood vessels to constrict and blood pressure and heart rate to rise sharply. This stress storm can be the final trigger for a vascular event in a system already under morning strain. This is a critical point, I emphasize. I know so many seniors, and I've been guilty myself, who take their morning pills, maybe with coffee, and then don't eat for several hours. You're saying this combination, medication on an empty stomach plus the physiological stress of hypoglycemia, is particularly hazardous? One of the most dangerous combinations I see clinically, Dr. Hinohara states gravely. Regrettably, many stroke cases I've encountered in patients over 65 involve this exact scenario. Skipped morning meals coupled with morning medication doses, often compounded by an external stressor, like an argument or rushing. The body, already struggling with thickened blood, pressure surges, and now hypoglycemic stress and medication effects, simply couldn't cope. So what's the solution? Force down a big breakfast, even without appetite? Not at all, he reassures. Instead, prioritize a small, easily digestible, protein-rich bite. Think of it as stabilizing fuel, not a feast. Half a boiled egg, a small spoonful of plain yogurt or cottage cheese, a few soaked almonds or walnuts, a small piece of cheese, even a tablespoon of nut butter. The protein is key as it helps stabilize blood sugar more effectively than pure carbohydrates. This isn't about stuffing yourself. It's about providing enough readily available glucose and protein to tell your brain, fuel is here. Systems are supported. Proceed safely. It signals stability to your entire metabolism and vascular system. That truly shifts my perspective. I reflect. For years, skipping breakfast felt like a form of discipline, even a point of pride, like I was doing something tough and healthy. But now I see it's not discipline. It's denying the brain the fundamental fuel it desperately needs at the exact moment it's most vulnerable. It's ignoring a core biological requirement. You're not alone in that feeling, John. Dr. Hinohara says kindly, many seniors, particularly men, view breakfast as optional, even indulgent. But after 60, when it comes to maintaining stable circulation and protecting the brain, nothing that supports that core function is optional. It's essential maintenance. And that, I segue, brings us directly to habit number 4, rushing into mental stress. I can see the recognition on your face. What does this mean in the context of a senior's morning? It means, Dr. Hinohara explains, the very common pattern of immediately bombarding the barely awake brain with high-stakes information or conflict. Checking the news headlines before your feet even touch the floor. Often encountering negativity or crisis first thing. Scrolling through work emails or financial updates at the breakfast table. Engaging in a heated discussion with a spouse about the day's schedule or a problem before either of you has had water, food, or a moment of calm. This is a profound problem. Why is this timing so critical? I ask, because the brain emerging from sleep is in a unique, somewhat fragile state. He details. It hasn't fully completed the shift from sleep-associated theta and delta brainwaves to the alert beta waves of full wakefulness. Your cortisol levels are already naturally peaking as part of the circadian rhythm. Your blood pressure is likely rising as part of the morning surge. Now, if you layer significant mental or emotional strain onto this already heightened physiological state, you effectively amplify the stress load exponentially. You're hitting the gas pedal hard while the engine is still cold. He cites compelling research. A major prospective cohort study published in the journal Stroke followed over 93,000 Japanese adults for more than a decade. Their analysis yielded a powerful finding. Individuals who reported experiencing high levels of psychological stress early in the day were significantly more likely to suffer a stroke, even after meticulously controlling for other major risk factors like age, smoking history, blood pressure, and cholesterol levels. And here's the crucial detail for our listeners. He emphasizes, the heightened risk was most pronounced in participants over 60, and the risk was highest within the first 3 hours after waking. So, when you wake up and immediately reach for your phone to check the news or dive headfirst into the day's problems without creating mental and emotional space, you're piling significant psychological pressure onto an already physiologically stressed system. You are stacking risk upon risk. Instead, he offers the antidote. Consciously create a buffer zone. Dedicate just 10 minutes, truly just 10, to quiet transition. Sit with your tea or water and simply breathe. Look out a window. Listen to calming music, gentle stretching, a short, mindful walk outside if possible. Give your brain and nervous system a chance to downshift from the cortisol peak, to stabilize blood pressure naturally, and to transition fully into wakefulness before you load it with cognitive demands or emotional turmoil. This isn't self-indulgence. It's fundamental neurological and cardiovascular hygiene. It's allowing the storm surge to recede before setting sail. That study you mentioned, I say, feeling its impact, that genuinely shook me. I used to think of stress as primarily emotional, something you felt, maybe vented about, and moved on from. Hearing that it physically, measurably primes the vascular system for a stroke, especially in that volatile first few hours after waking, it completely changes how I view every jarring notification, every alarming headline, every rushed or tense morning conversation. It reframes stress as a direct biological threat, not just a mood. And now, I take a breath. We've arrived at the one we've been building towards. You signaled at the very start of our conversation that this final morning habit might be the most dangerous of all, and yet, paradoxically, the most frequently ignored. So, let's confront it directly. Dr. Hinohara, what is the 5th perilous morning habit? He meets the question with quiet intensity. It can be summed up in one word, John, but it underpins so many of the risks we've discussed: prolonged physical stillness. Not the restful, mindful stillness, but the inert, sedentary kind. Waking up and then spending the subsequent hour or even two in a state of near-complete physical inactivity. sitting on the bed, sitting at the table reading, sitting on the couch watching TV. No real movement, no active circulation, just stillness. That sounds like the quintessential easing into the day for many retirees. I observe. Wake up, pour the coffee, settle into the favorite chair with the paper or the tablet. It feels calm, normal, even healthy. Are you saying this stillness itself is a significant danger? Absolutely, yes. Dr. Hinohara states unequivocally, especially after 60, and especially during that high-risk first hour. Here's why. Your blood, as we know, is naturally more prone to clotting with age. Your veins, particularly the deep veins in the legs, rely heavily on the muscle pump, the contraction of leg muscles during movement, to efficiently push blood back up towards the heart against gravity. The valves in these veins can become less effective over time. Without regular muscle contractions, blood flow in the legs slows dramatically. Blood pools. This stagnation is the primary breeding ground for deep vein thrombosis, DVT, blood clots forming in the deep veins. We've long known this risk in hospitalized patients confined to bed, he continues. But what many fail to realize is that everyday prolonged sitting, particularly right after the overnight fast and immobility of sleep, creates a similar physiological environment. Your body can't distinguish between a hospital bed and your favorite recliner when it comes to venous stasis. Hours of sleep followed immediately by an hour or more of sitting creates an extended period of significantly reduced blood flow in the legs. This dramatically increases the risk of a clot forming. If that clot breaks loose, becoming an embolus, it travels through the bloodstream and can lodge in the lungs, pulmonary embolism, or if it passes through a hole in the heart, like an undiagnosed atrial fibrillation, it can travel to the brain, causing a stroke. He brings in the data. A significant study published in the prestigious journal Circulation tracked the activity patterns of over 8,000 adults aged 60 and above. Their findings were stark. Those who spent more than 9 hours per day sedentary, regardless of whether they engaged in moderate exercise later on, had double the risk of suffering a stroke compared to their more active peers. Double. Why the focus on regardless of later exercise? I asked. Because it highlights a vital point, he explains. It's not just about the total amount of movement in a day. It's critically about when you move and breaking up prolonged periods of stillness. The first hour after waking is a uniquely vulnerable window due to the physiological factors we've discussed. If you remain completely sedentary during this time, you're maximizing the stagnation and clot risk right when your vascular system is under peak strain. Moving early breaks this cycle. It signals to your body that the rest period is over and active circulation must begin. So, the fix isn't intense exercise at dawn. I clarify. Hibbins, no. Dr. Hinohara chuckles softly. Nothing extreme. No need for a treadmill sprint or breaking a sweat. We're talking about 5 to 10 minutes of light mobility within that first 30 to 60 minutes after waking. March gently in place while waiting for the kettle. Do those shoulder rolls and ankle circles we mentioned. Stretch your arms overhead. Walk slowly to the mailbox and back. Simply put, tell your blood it's time to flow. Activate the muscle pump. Disperse the stagnation. When blood flows freely and efficiently, the brain receives the oxygen and nutrients it needs to thrive. And when the brain thrives, the entire body, your vitality, your clarity, your joy, follows suit. That brings our conversation powerfully full circle. I reflect. We began talking about strokes as seemingly sudden catastrophes. But what you've illuminated, Dr. Hinohara, is the hidden landscape where the real risks are seated, in the subtle warning signs easily brushed off, and in the small, ordinary habits of our morning routines. How we move or don't, what we drink or skip, how we manage our minds and bodies in those first precious moments of the day. This is where the battle for brain health is truly waged. Exactly, John Dior. Hinohara concludes, his voice filled with a blend of urgency and profound hope. Health after 60 is rarely about grand, overnight transformations. It's about the quiet, consistent cultivation of awareness. It's about learning the language of your body and responding with kindness and wisdom. Your brain isn't demanding perfection. It's whispering, sometimes through tiny clumsiness or fleeting confusion, asking simply for your attention. It's asking you to notice. Dr. Hinohara, I say, deeply moved, the final word, as always, belongs to you. If you could leave our listeners with one parting thought, one line to carry with them into their tomorrow mornings, what would it be? The centenarian physician looks directly into the metaphorical eyes of every listener, his gaze sharp, compassionate, and unwavering. Your greatest shield against the silent storm isn't found in a pill or a procedure. It's forged in the small, conscious choices you make at dawn. Choose movement over stillness, water over mere caffeine, nourishment over emptiness, and calm over chaos. Notice the whispers your body sends. They're its most valiant attempt to protect you. Pay attention today so you can thrive tomorrow. This awareness is the deepest wisdom, the truest longevity practice. Like this episode if it resonated. Subscribe for more journeys where ancient wisdom meets modern science. And may your mornings always be filled with mindful, protective grace.